What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MyMovieGuide.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is the 35th anniversary of Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which was Steven Soderbergh's breakthrough directorial effort from 1989 that starred James Spader, Andie MacDowell, Peter Gallagher, and Laura San Giacomo. It's a small movie, and and I always ask I did watch this with audio description, and I always ask the question, like, does this stand the test of time? And the question is maybe. I think for some people it has, but I think those people are like film nerds. Like, I think that I don't think the average moviegoer gives much credence or thought to Sex, Lies, and Videotape on like a daily basis, on the reg, so to speak. This isn't like necessarily the most profound film, but there are fans of Steven Soderbergh who are always going to remember sort of where he got his start, like where the beginning was. He's a big enough director that there will be people who always get interested in film and are always interested in where he started, like, and they won't just start with like Traffic, you know. I feel like something happened before this. Yeah, a lot of things. But they will actually go back and find his earlier works. He's a workaholic in terms of director too, so he has quite a filmography behind him. I like the film. As far as the audio description track, from what I'm remembering, like paring it down to the thing, I think it could have done a better job of from what I remember. Man, I don't remember this film at all. I don't even know. Like, God, it's been years. But it didn't show. It didn't talk enough about the, like, when things are being shown like from a camera perspective and when things are being like in real life. And he does play with that a little bit from what I remember, from the little bit that I remember. But this is kind of a very small movie, very independent film. It's very focused on these four people and their relationships to each other. Andie and Peter play a married couple who, there's Peter's friend, played by James Spader, is coming to stay with them for a little while. His name is Graham. And he's very interesting as the film sort of rolls out. He considers himself impotent because he can't get an erection in front of anybody, so he's basically useless. He can only be erect by himself. So he has this like weird fetish where he like videotapes people and talks to them. And that's his thing. So which we discover later on, as sort of like the women in the cast end up being on videotape with him. But also Peter Gallagher has this interesting story where he's cheating on Andie MacDowell with her sister, played by Laura San Giacomo, who, is the sexier, sultry one. Andie is a little bit more of the, I'm not really into sex. I don't know. I don't understand. Laura San she's all about it. Let's say her name is Cheryl. And so it feels like it's always headed to something. It's one of those films that feels like there's going to be a collision at some point, and that James Spader is there as the catalyst for that. He is, for all intents and purposes, the fire is raging. He is the accelerant. There's already a fire here. He doesn't necessarily know exists, but he is the accelerant that will throw the fuel on the fire just by being present, because prior to him even showing up, the affair is already happening. And the fact that they're sisters is just going to further complicate problems. So, yeah, it's an interesting movie. I think Soderbergh, I think when you look at a lot of directors, you realize their first film is not always their best film. It turns out to be kind of disappointing when it is their best film, but most of the greats, they end up showing you their hand as to like what they can do early on, and they're like, look at this, look at what I'm capable of. I'm thinking of like Christopher Nolan with Following. Like, that's an excellent sort of like concept of what he could do later on down the line. But he immediately followed that up with Memento, which immediately became the better movie. And since then, he's had everything from like The Dark Knight to Oppenheimer. So, like, the conversation about what's your favorite Christopher Nolan movie never ends up being following. And I think that's the same thing with Steven Soderbergh is you have that conversation and you're like, what's your favorite Steven Soderbergh movie? And people are like, oh, well, I really love Traffic or Aaron Brockovich or Out of Sight or Ocean's 11. Um, but nobody really ever goes back to Sex, Lies, and Videotape. It always feels like there was something that he did later where he really sort of had developed his style. He had more budget, and the film has more of a lasting impact to be able to jump on board and say, well, this is the shit. This is the good shit right here, you know? But there's nothing wrong with this. This is a perfectly fine debut feature. And if you're interested in seeing Steven Soderbergh in his earlier work, a lot of these actors really before they became their thing, this doesn't feel like James Spader as James Spader being his James Spader-y thing. He just like has dominated his career. It's like he's just been very sort of one note for most of his career, but it works really well for him. That note works really well for him. Sort of like watching early Al Pacino, and then you watch later Al Pacino, and he's doing a lot of that. Oh, wow, yeah, I don't know, Pacino, this, bro. And you're like, but you watch the earlier stuff, and you're like, why are you nothing like that? Like, what happened? At what point? What kind of direction did you get that turned you into that? Anyway, like a caricature of themselves. But yeah, James very much has had that happen to him. And the other actors have obviously continued to turn in great work. Laura has dropped off the face of the planet. Honestly, I don't know what she's doing, but the other two, Peter and Andie, continue to act regularly and do really great work. So this is the celebration of the 35th anniversary. So is this film high on your list? Is this one of your favorites? If you really like independent film, I suppose you would lean towards the more independent side of Steven Soderbergh with this movie. But he also did like Unsane, which he shot like entirely on an iPhone. So I guess you could make a case for that being, but I still think people will choose Sex, Lies, and Videotape. He does always make interesting choices. He tries to anyway, for the most part, make interesting choices. I shouldn't say always. Sort of like not every Steven Spielberg movie is amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna give Sex, Lies, and Videotape a B+. I just think he's done better work since then, but it's a really strong debut. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.